Skin cancer affects typically 1 out of 5 people in the United States of America at some point in their life. So that's 20% of Americans. And it's often caused by UV radiation from overexposure to the sun. This is more common in people who are fair-skinned and elderly people. So the more time you've spent on the earth, you are exposed to more sun, so that's why it's more common in people who are older. There are 3 common types of skin cancer. The first is called basal, so this is basal over here. And this is the most common and the least deadly. Basal seldom metastasizes to other tissues. It's named basal because it starts in the stratum basale, and then it creates kind of this shiny dome here and this central depression. This is fairly easily treated because it doesn't metastasize. What will happen is a doctor will remove the cancerous skin and then let the skin grow back after that. Squamous cell, so this is squamous cell carcinoma, is going to happen in the stratum spinosum with the keratinocytes. It creates kind of this red scaly appearance right here. Sometimes lethal. It can metastasize to the lymph nodes, and if it does, it can become lethal. And then melanoma is down here. This is going to typically happen on cancer of the melanocytes, and this is usually found on moles. So moles have extremely high concentrations of melanocytes, and this represents less than 5% of cancers. So it's the least common, but it's the most deadly. It's a very aggressive cancer. So if it's treated early, it can be treated with surgery by removing the cancerous cells. But however, once it metastasizes to another part of the body, it often doesn't respond to chemo. The average person who is diagnosed with melanoma lives about 6 months. There are some American Cancer Society signs that you might have melanoma, and they go A, B, C, D. So A is asymmetry. Most normal moles are a pretty symmetrical, so like this is a normal mole, it's a pretty symmetrical circle. This is not symmetrical, it's got this like large bulge over here. B is border irregularity. So if you look here, most moles are fairly smooth on the outside. This has got kind of bumps and irregularities on the border. C stands for color. This melanoma mole is definitely much darker. So when moles change color from lighter to darker, that's a good indication that you should get them checked. And then D is diameter. So a diameter of greater than 6 millimeters, so that's bigger than a 0.5 centimeter, is an indication that you might want to get looked at. So no one of these things on its own is definitely like you should freak out and have melanoma or anything. But if you see one or more of these appear on a mole that did not have that previously, that would be an indication that you should go see a dermatologist. Skin also burns, and we have 3 different types of burns. 1st degree, 2nd degree, and 3rd degree burns. 1st and 2nd degree are called partial thickness burns because it does not burn all the way through the skin. A 1st degree burn is going to burn partially through the epidermis and none of the dermis. So this is common with like a typical sunburn. So it's going to be in part of the epidermis, but none of the dermis. A 2nd degree burn is a much more serious burn. So this is going to burn all the way through the epidermis, so all of the epidermis, and then part of the dermis. So this burn goes all the way down to here. These burns, you're going to see blisters. Remember, blisters occur when we get fluid at the epidermis and dermis junction. So you can see that there's some massive blistering here. Depending on the size of these wounds, they may have to be packed so that they can heal properly. If it's burned really deep into the dermis, you may need a skin graft. And then a 3rd degree burn is called a full thickness burn because it burns all of the epidermis and all of the dermis all the way down into the hypodermis. So this is going to be extreme heat exposure to things like a fire. These are definitely going to need to be debrided so that they can heal properly, which is where all of the kind of charred and dead flesh is removed to expose living flesh so that it can grow to fill in the space. And then if this is a large burn, you typically are going to need a skin graft to kind of cover these areas. So these regions where it's not close to any adjacent skin, the dermis does not go through mitosis to replicate. Only the epidermis will be able to heal. So over the dermis areas where the dermis is deeply burned, we would need a skin patch. So take a moment and reflect on the 3 different types of burns.